The latest news, updates, and more from the world of health and medicine. This is Medical Minutes with Wish TV's medical reporter, Dr. Mary Gillis.
From Wish TV, I'm medical reporter Dr. Mary Gillis, and this is Medical Minutes on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Influenza cases are at an all-time low this season in Indiana. It's almost as if the virus has disappeared. Doctors say this was expected because of the mild season in the southern hemisphere. However, they also say we can't forget about it. It will be back. This week, we spoke with Dr. Amy Beth Kressel, infectious disease specialist at Eskenazi Health, about why we can't discount the flu and what we need to know to prepare for next season. Our conversation is next. The flu, you were just speaking of that. Great numbers here. Well, of course, any death is very tragic, but we've been doing really well here in Indiana. From what I read, 5 deaths so far. And then down from previous years, we must be doing something right. So can you speak to these I don't know, historically low numbers?
Right. So I think some of the things we're doing helped, but I also do want to say viruses are strange and we don't completely understand how they play in the same sandbox together. So this year, people really took vaccines seriously. And I do think that the lack of travel and the quiet season in the Southern Hemisphere, the lack of travel, wearing masks, social distancing, they all have had impact on influenza. But I personally don't think that's the whole story because we still had COVID. And it just may be that COVID spreads more easily. You know, human beings never saw COVID before a year ago. So we're all very vulnerable. And it may be that it's just the two viruses are different and one is more amenable to these measures than other. But I also think it tells us there's more going on with influenza than we totally understand. Sometimes one virus can just outcompete the other. So when COVID came to Indiana, the influenza rates just plummeted, even before we all were wearing masks. And I remember in 2009, when we first had H1N1, all the other stuff went away. We didn't have a lot of respiratory syncytial virus that year. It was pretty much gone. And that's a virus that we usually have. And this year, not only is influenza pretty much a no-show, but respiratory syncytial virus was a no-show. And there are other viruses that just didn't show up this year. So some of our precautions against COVID are helping. And I think that maybe, in future influenza seasons, we might want to do some of these things again, although not to this degree. But I also think it may just be COVID itself, that at this point, it's so overwhelming that it's just interacting with the other viruses in ways we don't fully understand.
That is so interesting, the way that you put that. There's sort of like beings interacting with one another, playing in the same sandbox. That's really interesting how you phrase that. And then, at some point, we have kids also, like you mentioned, the travel restrictions, all the masks, kids virtual learning. People are staying at home. They're working remotely, those things too. But these things might change. So, again, we don't know what's going to happen, but these travel restrictions are going to be lifted. Kids are going back to school. And I know the flu, school's like a petri dish for the flu with kids, especially.
Right. And, there's just increasing data about how difficult online school has been for children and their parents. CDC just released a new report that confirms what everybody kind of feels, that it's stressful for everyone in the family and that it's hurting mental and physical health of kids. So we all know that, and we all want this to be over. And I am not in any way advocating that we're going to do virtual learning forever. I want my own children back in in-person classes as much as anyone else. But there may be things we can learn from this. So, in the past, people would send kids to school when they were coughing or not completely well. And maybe in the future, instead of having the choice of no school or sending your sniffly kid to school, and trying to balance that as a parent, like, okay, I don't want my kid to miss school. How sick are they? How sick do they have to be for me to keep them home? Right? That's hard as a parent. But if we always had e-learning as a background option, I think that would be really helpful moving forward. Because then if your child was sick but not having 104 fever and you were struggling with what to do with them, you could have that option of them having be in e-learning and not missing class, but also not getting other people sick. Or there are always children who are really vulnerable, like children getting chemotherapy who can't be in school and have to get private tutoring. If you could maintain some level of hybrid learning into the future, you could really help children like that. I realize it's hard for the school districts to do the hybrid learning. It's been very difficult for them. But if we're thinking future and trying to learn some things that we've learned from this, it would probably be very helpful to have the majority of children in class, but a few children able to learn from home when necessary. That's just something that might be actually nice to learn from this.
Dr. Krystal, that is so interesting, right? I mean, this has been a year of learning, adapting, and remote learning could be a great thing in the future as sort of a backup plan, a plan B for these children, as you're speaking about, who might be vulnerable to chemotherapy or the decision also when if a parent has to stay home from work and take care of their child or the 104 fever, they can hop on. That's so interesting. So we don't have to get rid of that completely. It could be something really, really good that we've learned. And any last thoughts about the flu and what we've been talking about?
Yes, don't count influenza out ever. Okay. We're feeling great this year. It will come back. There is actually a new strain of influenza, an avian influenza strain that's been found in Russia now. So the World Health Organization and CDC will be keeping an eye on that. It's just a reminder that influenza is not gone. And so next year, people may think, oh, wow, they warned me about influenza and it didn't come. Still get your flu shot next year because influenza will not be gone forever.
Wow. Dr. Krystal, always great to see you. Thank you so much. This has been Medical Minutes from Wish TV. I'm medical reporter Dr. Mary Gillis. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and check out new updates every week. You can also learn more at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook.
Learn more and get more with Wish TV. Online at wishtv.com and when you follow Wish TV on Facebook. Be sure to check out more great podcasts from the All Indiana Podcast Network now at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.